The rain had been falling since late afternoon. At Club Hearth, it tapped softly against the tall windows. Warm amber lamps glowed against the dark wooden walls, while the smell of cedar and wood smoke filled the quiet room. At a table near the window, Leo sat staring into a cup of black coffee. At 32, he had always believed that if he worked hard, planned carefully, and made the right decisions, life would eventually become stable. But that belief had disappeared almost overnight. 3 months earlier, Leo had lost his job at a design firm. His department had been eliminated during a company restructuring. A project he'd spent 6 months working on was shelved. His savings were running low, and the week before, Sarah had left. She told him she couldn't keep planning a future when neither of them knew what that future looked like. Leo understood, but understanding didn't make it hurt less. Across the room, Grandpa Joe was arranging cups behind the counter. After watching Leo for a while, he brought over a fresh cup of tea and sat across from him. "You've been staring at that coffee for a long time," Joe said. Leo gave a tired smile. "I think I'm hoping it'll tell me what to do next." Joe smiled. "Coffee's never been very good at giving advice." Leo laughed quietly. Then his expression changed. "I just don't get it, Joe. I did everything right. I worked hard, I saved money, I planned ahead." He looked down at his hands. "I thought I was building a life." He paused. "Now I don't have a job. Sarah's gone. My savings are disappearing. I don't even know who I am anymore." Joe listened. He didn't tell Leo that everything happened for a reason. He didn't tell him that things would magically get better. Instead, he said, "Tomorrow morning, I need a favor." Leo looked up. "There's an old farmer named Arthur Miller. His northern pasture fence was damaged in the last storm." Joe leaned back. "Go help him repair it." Leo frowned. "Joe, I need a job." "I know. I need to figure out my life." "I know that too." Joe smiled. "But you're not going to solve your whole life tonight." Leo sighed. "Just to help Arthur?" "Just help Arthur." The next morning, Leo drove to the Miller farm. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray. Arthur was waiting beside the northern pasture. He was an older man with a weathered face and kind eyes. "Joe said you'd come." Leo nodded. Arthur handed him a pair of leather gloves and a hammer. The storm took down 3 sections. They walked toward the fence. Several cedar posts had snapped, while others had fallen sideways. Arthur pointed toward one of them. "That one looked fine until we pulled it out." Leo looked closer. The wood near the ground was dark and soft. "Rot?" Arthur nodded. "Been there for years." Leo looked at the post. You couldn't see it, not from the outside. They started working. For the next few hours, Leo pulled out old nails, replaced boards, dug holes, and secured new posts. The work was tiring. His hands became sore. His back began to ache. Mud covered his boots. But something unexpected happened. For those few hours, he stopped thinking about his problems. He wasn't checking his bank balance. He wasn't thinking about Sarah. He wasn't searching for jobs. He was simply focused on the next post. By late morning, they reached the final section. Leo drove the last nail into place and stepped back. Arthur looked over the fence. "That should hold." Leo nodded. Then he looked at the old posts lying on the ground. From a distance, they hadn't looked that bad, but once they were pulled out, the damage was obvious. Leo stood quietly, and for the first time, he thought about his own life differently. His job loss still hurt. He didn't suddenly believe it happened for a reason. But if he was honest,
He hadn't been happy at that company for a long time. He had stopped creating for himself. He had talked about building his own design portfolio for years, but there was always a reason to wait. And Sarah, well, he still missed her, but their relationship hadn't fallen apart in a single week. They had been drifting apart for months. Maybe the storm hadn't caused all the damage. Maybe it simply revealed what was already weak. Leo looked at the repaired fence. He still didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know when he'd find another job. He didn't know whether his design work would succeed. But for the first time in months, he didn't need all the answers. He just needed to take the next step. That evening, Leo returned to Club Hearth. Joe was behind the counter preparing tea. "How was the fence?" "Harder than I expected." Joe smiled. "Most useful things are." Leo sat down. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he looked at Joe. "Some of the posts were already rotten." Joe nodded. "They looked fine from the outside." Leo stared through the window. "I think that's what you wanted me to see." Joe didn't answer. Leo continued. "I kept thinking one storm destroyed my life." He paused. "But maybe some things had been falling apart long before I noticed." Joe gave a small nod. Leo took a slow breath. "I still don't know what I'm going to do." "You don't have to know tonight." Leo smiled. "Tomorrow, I'm going to start working on my portfolio." Joe nodded. "Good place to start." Leo looked toward the rain-streaked window. His life wasn't fixed. He was still unemployed. His savings were still running low. Sarah was still gone. Nothing outside that room had magically changed, but something inside him had. He no longer needed to know where the road would end. He just needed to build the next part, one step at a time, one post at a time. Joe lifted his cup to new foundations. Leo raised his cup to new foundations. Outside, the rain continued to fall. But this time, Leo didn't see it as a storm coming to destroy his life. It was simply rain. And tomorrow, he had something to build.